1914, Canada for the first time hears the call to arms in the cause of freedom. For Canada, the first great war was the story of manpower. During 4 years, over 500,000 of her sons earned undying glory. In the first terrible gas attack at St. Julien, in the 100 Days, and above all, at Vimy Ridge, their feats of valor rang round the world. But let that epic story be retold.
On April 8, 1917, was Easter Sunday. It was bright and sunny. In the forenoon, battalions held their church parade, as was their wont. As the day advanced, the Canadians swung out of their billets and trudged along the white road that led to Vimy. Here was to be a supreme test of the Canadian cause. Additional ammunition was distributed as the troops proceeded forward. And as night fell, the transports with all the loads of material necessary to consolidate rumbled towards the ridge. In the forward trenches, the infantrymen worked and waited. Intense gunfire continued throughout the night until 0 hour, 5 a.m., April 9th. Then, in one great chorus of deafening explosion, the greatest mass of guns so far concentrated on the Western Front belched their shrieking missiles onto Vimy Ridge. Flaming heralds of death tore viciously into the earth, rending it with devastating fury. The infantry leaped from their trenches and the great attack began. All 4 Canadian divisions swept forward in line. Through a snowstorm, the Canadians plowed across no man's land into the enemy trenches. Enemy machine guns tore through them, but with little heed to conditions or casualties, the Canadians pressed on. The German forward defenses were quickly stormed. Stretcher bearers followed rapidly on the heels of the advancing troops. The long lines of Canadians moved ahead. Commandant's House, Taylor's, Laffoley Farm, all fell to the victorious onrush. The light artillery, now outranged, galloped forward to seek new positions on the ridge itself. With machine-like precision, the attacking waves swept on. Up over the crest of Vimy, on to their final objective. Vimy Ridge was won.
This ground, hallowed by the sacrifice of a warrior nation, was given in gratitude to Canada by the people of France, and on the heights a monument was built. In August 1936, Canada's king unveiled a memorial to the 60,000 who did not return, while veterans of the last war stood silent in memory of their fallen comrades. But the First Great War also made Canada a great industrial nation, and in the years that followed, she first began to realize the immense wealth lying within her territories. Factory, mill, and furnace transformed her raw materials to finished goods, and in the tough post-war world of international trade, she became a power to be reckoned with. From harsh northern rock, she gouged out metal, vital to industrial leadership. Her gold mines pushed the frontier further north, and in the production of nickel and asbestos, she soon led the world. Sawmills in her vast forests yearly sliced up millions of feet of timber. She harnessed her myriad lakes and rivers to produce electrical power for her expanding industries. Fresh immigrants poured into her western wheatlands, and #1 Northern was a household word on 3 continents. A network of railroads swiftly carried raw materials and manufactured goods across the land. binding her people together in a closer economic unity. She dug new canals to link her system of inland waterways. Each year, from April to November, freighters moved from the Great Lakes to the seaboard. And from docks and quays, her products sailed to the four corners of the earth. Air transport mushroomed overnight till Canada carried more air freight than any country in the world. She bred a race of hardy bush pilots, new pioneers who opened up the north and carved fresh paths to the Arctic. From such beginnings sprang her great artery of the air, Trans-Canada Airlines. By the close of the 30s, this nation of barely 11 millions stood fifth in total world trade. In the spring of 1939, the 20th year of peace, a reigning monarch first set foot on Canada's soil. A powerful young nation, her face to the future, greeted the royal pair in the proud knowledge that their visit set a final seal on her position as an equal partner in the British Commonwealth of Nations. As the King and Queen crossed the Dominion in triumphal progress, the world saw a strong young democracy on parade, full of pride in its maturity. The royal visit was itself a parade that marked the climax of Canada's peacetime reconstruction. But across the Atlantic, the world saw another parade, the climax to another and vastly different period of reconstruction. Lebensraum, expand or perish. Through the hot summer of 1939, tension mounts rapidly. On September 1st, Warsaw is bombed. 2 days later, Britain and France are at war with the Third Reich. 3,000 miles across the ocean, Canada, on September 10th, declares war in her own right as an independent nation. Long will she remember the first simple acts of wartime preparation, the people in the streets as they watched the news bulletins, expecting hourly to hear that London had been bombed, that friends and relatives were missing. From Parliament Hill, Prime Minister Mackenzie King's speech to the people tells of the Dominion stand beside Britain and France in the fight against aggression. We are menaced by forces that seek world dominion, he says, and it is against these forces that the war effort of Canada is directed and will continue to be directed until peace with freedom is restored. For the second time in 25 years, Canada is at war with Germany. At once, with well-oiled precision, her fighting forces rush to the ramparts. Minesweepers begin their watch for the U-boat's hidden menace. Destroyers speed out to sea from eastern ports. Overhead, squadrons of reconnaissance planes sweep seaward to keep watch far beyond the land. On the eastern seaboard, coastal defense guns swing to the horizon. So, as winter's first snows whiten the ground, the Dominion again gets down to its job of war, amid the familiar wartime restrictions. Mindful of Canada's great fighting tradition, recruits flock to the colors. And on the parade grounds of the nation, the rookie once more goes through the familiar maneuvers. The women of Canada, too, take up their wartime task. With skill born of long practice, nimble fingers make up surgical dressings. Crate after crate of clothing is dispatched to Britain's evacuated children and to the refugees from shattered Poland. Busy hands begin anew to work for men in active service, and needles click in every leisure moment. In cities and towns throughout the land, service canteens, organized and run by women, arise to meet the soldiers' needs. Quickly, too, industrial machinery gears itself to the needs of a Commonwealth at war. While this changeover goes forward, the 1st Canadian Division leaves for overseas. Quietly and without drums or fanfare, men whose fathers stormed Vimy Ridge nearly a quarter of a century before, in turn bid farewell to their loved ones. In the gray December light, Canada's fighting men board vessels whose peacetime shapes loom strangely under a coating of drab paint. Convoyed by the main British battle fleet, the transports move out to sea, across to fight where others too have fought in defense of democracy and freedom. So in these early days, Canada keeps faith. Construction of new airfields, equipment depots, and repair shops across the country shows that the $600 million British Commonwealth Air Training Plan is well underway. But the flimsy craft in which Canadians rose to fame in the First Great War have become sleek metal monsters of incredible speed and power. And to Canada's factories, beyond the range of the fleetest enemy bombers, falls the task of making aircraft to meet an ever-growing demand. Soon, from her well-equipped plants, skilled technicians turn out bombers, pursuit planes, and trainers at increasing speed. From across the line, her great neighbor to the south sends other planes. Hauled over the border, these craft are rapidly checked over by Air Force mechanics and join the growing fleet of warplanes. A nation with flying in its blood finds the provision of men an easy task. In 78 schools across the Dominion, young men, firm in the great tradition of Bishop, Collishaw, and Barker, begin the intricate training necessary to the pilot, air observer, and air gunner. With their fellows from Australia, New Zealand, and Newfoundland, they prepare to swell the Allied air strength until each year 35,000 airmen will be ready to handle Spitfires, Hurricanes, and Defiants, and provide a fitting answer to the Nazi air armada, whose superiority is one of numbers alone. While war plans advance at an increasing tempo, winter passes into spring, and with spring comes the Blitzkrieg.
Wenn man uns erst nicht hilft, gar nichts nützen, denn sie können ja kaufen. Dann könnten wir heute kaum Jahre vorher ausplündern sollen. Sind wir auch, dass wir kaufen können.
Denmark, Norway, Holland, Belgium fall in quick succession before the invader. New battle lines extend from the Arctic Circle down to Spain, and in northern waters, British warships fight out many a grim battle with the dive bombers of the enemy. At Dunkirk, the British Expeditionary Force, outflanked and outnumbered, executes in 5 terrible days the brilliant evacuation from Flanders. The Royal Navy and the Royal Air Force, backed by a fleet of Channel steamers, pleasure boats, fishing smacks, yachts, and Thames barges, snatch from under the very noses of the German High Command 9/10 of a force which the Nazis boasted they had trapped. With France in desperate straits, Italy enters the war.
On this 10th day of June, 1940, we are convinced that military and naval victory for the gods of force and hate would endanger the institutions of democracy in the Western world, and that equally, therefore, the whole of our sympathies lie with those nations that are giving their lifeblood in combat against those forces.
12 days later, Britain stands alone against the invader. Alone, but grimly determined, Britain, sole remaining citadel of freedom in a darkened Europe, turns herself into an island fortress. In every house, on every field, along every highway, and on every beach, men stand on guard against the threatened invasion. From Canada come fresh contingents of men to aid in defending this island stronghold and to reinforce their comrades already in training in Britain. Already the Canadians are a compact body of hard-hitting, efficient fighters, toughened by long training. But they must learn this new warfare from the ground up. They must practice for mobile war, where instant action, high speed, and thorough technical knowledge are the things that count. Typical of the new warfare is the commander, General MacNaughton, a scientist called from the ranks of research. He says of his men, they will give a good account of themselves. And so the Battle of Britain begins. Ceaselessly, the RAF ranges the sky. Anti-aircraft guns bark from the ground below. Their message is of the sort which Nazi Germany can understand. At home, construction work across the land hits a new high as Canada adopts Herbert Morrison's slogan, "Go to it." To the new Ministry of Munitions and Supply falls the task of speeding up the organization of industry on an intensive war footing as the country realizes this is no longer a slow, protracted war, but a sharp, intensive combat. It's a task made easier by the industrial survey which the Defense Department undertook long before the threat of war, storing in its files detailed information on 2,000 Canadian plants. A staff of 350 works far into the nights, drawing up war contracts. On the Atlantic and Pacific coasts, on the St. Lawrence and the Great Lakes, shipyards resound to the riveter's hammer. For home defense, a $50 million shipbuilding program already calls for 28 minesweepers, 40 patrol boats, and 46 Wasp-like anti-submarine torpedo boats. The automotive industry turns over its well-equipped shops, its intricate tools, and its army of skilled workers to the production of military transports. Since war began, more than 8,000 completed units have come off the straight line. Tough, heavy-duty trucks are ready to go anywhere, as mobile warfare requires. Last war, Canada turned out 66.5 million shells. Today, that munitions experience is the basis of intense activity in armament manufacture. The full resources of a mineral wealth are mobilized to equal and surpass that effort. Technicians in our machine shops, already geared to peak production, are on a 7-day week. Skilled technicians, too, work night and day to produce the Bren gun, whose highly polished parts must be fitted within 1/10,000th part of an inch. Modern infantry attack needs a quick-firing automatic rifle, light to carry, simple to operate. But more than 17,000 tools, jigs, and dies must be prepared to fashion the Bren gun's delicate mechanism. But as vital as shining steel to Britain is a steady flow of foodstuffs. Hard prairie wheat is harvested, and the farms of Nova Scotia and British Columbia contribute their fruit. Essential to the safe shipment of goods is Canada's efficient transport system. Swiftly and smoothly, grain, fruit, meat funnel into terminal warehouses from feeder truck lines and thence to the two great railroad systems. Canada, whose people own more railroad mileage per head than any in the world, finds her steel network none too large to handle the immense freight traffic which war requires. The Dominion government grants a $20 million loan for fresh rolling stock, for new sidings, and for strengthening tracks to bear the heavy freight trains as they thunder eastward to the docks. At eastern ports, a fleet of freighters, augmented by ships from half a dozen once neutral countries, lies ready to load. Watchful eyes are on guard as the products of a nation's industry swing inboard to the hold. Sinews of war for Britain. Regularly as clockwork, the convoys assemble, and with a Canadian destroyer escorts, stand out to sea, loaded to the plimsoll mark. Atlantic sea lanes have become the vital artery connecting embattled Britain with her great arsenal and supply depot. But gone are the days when ocean conferred immunity from invasion. And so Canada turns with energy to the urgent problems of her home defense as a North American nation. With over 100,000 men under arms, she forms a 4th Division and recruits her militia to full strength. This war is total war. That fact, written in letters of blood and fire, has come home slowly to the democracies, but once accepted, is acted upon with resolution. For the challenge to democracy and to Canada is total, and she knows it can be met only by total means. So the last month of war's first year finds a nationwide registration. Listed according to their capacity and their talents are every man and woman in the Dominion to be drafted should need arise where they will do most good. As the first year of war runs out, to Canada comes the realization that Hitler must be beaten by his own methods. The nation rises as one man to preserve that which he knows and loves. The sleepy Laurentian village, the red earth of Prince Edward Island, where first the fathers of Confederation met. The glory of the open prairie, symbolic of the new world's freedom. And the great mountains of the West, a vast inheritance of hope and promise. To preserve and protect all that she holds dear, Canada, at the end of the war's first year, accepts the challenge of total warfare and stands on guard, for she knows that only thus will she survive.